Okay, let's start. So welcome everyone to the second international KLEE workshop on symbolic execution. I'm Cristian Cadar, the chair of the workshop, and in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give an overview of the workshop and also of the state of KLEE. So let me start in the good old pre-pandemic days when in 2018 we had the first international KLEE workshop on symbolic execution, which took place in April 2018 in London, more precisely at Imperial College London. And I think it was a very successful workshop. We had over 80 participants from academia, industry, and government. We had coming from many different countries. We had many different sponsors. We had fantastic keynotes, both from academia and from industry. We had regular talks, posters, and of course, being in person, we had lunches, coffee breaks, a pub outing, where you had interesting conversations. And I must say the feedback that we got post-workshop was absolutely fantastic. At least it made me blush a couple of times. And, we really wanted to do it again in the same format. So we started in 2019, before the pandemic, to plan for the second international workshop, KLEE workshop. And we set a date of September 2020 in London, and unfortunately, by spring of last year, we realized we cannot do this. But we kept trying. We thought, let's see if we can do it actually in April of this year. And unfortunately, it has also it became clear also that April is not doable either. So we decided to move it online now in June. So here we are. Now, we are here because we are interested in one way or another in symbolic execution and in KLEE in particular. And I think, as you all know, this is a technique with a long history. So it was introduced initially in the 70s by 3 different groups, as far as I'm aware. By James King at IBM T.J. Watson, Laurie Clark at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and Bayer, Elspas, and Levitt at the Stanford Research Institute. And in the next over 4 decades, I think we've seen many exciting developments, and particularly in the last decade, the technique, I think, really took off, and we've seen tremendous progress and also adoption that has started in industry as well. So now we have a very active area, and it's exciting to see so many different tools and techniques available there for many different programming languages, for many different program domains. And really here I just have like a subset, just a sample of what's out there. So one of these many symbolic execution tools is KLEE, and I think it's fair to say that it's one of the most popular symbolic execution systems available, and it's quite an active project. So on the one hand, it was open source more than 12 years ago now, but at the same time, it feels also like a very new project, because the KLEE that we have now, I think it's very different, and I think very much improved from the KLEE that we had 12 years ago. And in between, we've had 8 releases, over 2,000 commits, over 400, hopefully resolved issues. And we also have a very active community with over 100 contributors to the code base, including the code base of sub-projects, over 400 subscribers to the mailing list, almost 500 public forks of the KLEE repository, and quite a number of stars on GitHub. So I'm very happy to see that KLEE has received both academic and industry interest. So for instance, I'm proud that the KLEE paper received the SIGOPS Hall of Fame Award, and the ICSI paper, so it's the predecessor of KLEE and what inspired KLEE in many ways, got the CCS Test of Time Award. And looking, for instance, at the original KLEE paper, we have over 3,000 citations. But what I think is actually more exciting is that we have a large number of publications. So we have a list on the website, of which list over 220 publications and systems currently, which build upon KLEE. And I think if you look at these publications, you can actually see how many interesting and innovative ideas and interesting problems that were solved that were enabled in part by KLEE. And this comes from many different communities, and I only list some of them here with which I'm more familiar. Now, in terms of industry impact and interest, it's a bit harder to gather information about this. In fact, sometimes I meet people who tell me that KLEE is used in some form or another at their company, and I just didn't know anything about it because KLEE is released under a very liberal license. And but I think there is enough evidence to see that the industry is interested in this technology and in KLEE in particular. So, for instance, this is a list of companies that sponsored the first and the second KLEE workshops. At the first workshop, we had two very interesting keynotes talking about how KLEE-based technologies are used at Fujitsu and Baidu, respectively. And you can also find various reports on using or experimenting with KLEE and from other companies and from several different sources, including today's and tomorrow's workshop. Right. So, and finally, of course, yes, we have many industry participants at the KLEE workshop, and it was quite exciting to see that also at this edition we gather quite a large number of participants from industry. Now, KLEE and symbolic execution are used, of course, for bug finding, and I think that bug finding is extremely important. It's something that of course, I care about a lot, and I think we all care about having more, software that is that has fewer bugs. But at the same time, I think one of the strengths of symbolic execution is that it's applicable to many other problems beyond bug finding. And I think we're going to see some of this at this workshop. So for instance, it has been applied for program repair, verification, refactoring, education, debugging and fault localization, model learning, reverse engineering, side channel analysis, liveness analysis, binary lifting, detecting cheating in online games, and many, many other applications. All right, so this brings me back to our workshop today. So initially, when we decided to move it online, we thought we're just going to do like a very small workshop online, and then have another one in person soon. But I was positively surprised by the number of by the interest that the online workshop has also received. So we got over 200 registrations, and it's fantastic to see that this come from 34 countries across 6 different continents. So I think the only one we're missing is Antarctica, but I think given the the number of people living there, especially during the winter, I think it's understandable. And of course, I think it's fantastic that we have such an international presence. So welcome everyone. But what this makes very challenging is to schedule the online event. So here are here you can see like the countries aligned on a time zone. I have like BST here in the middle because we as organizer are in the UK. And you can see how many different time zones we span. So we thought about different options. We thought about having 3 different time bands, duplicating talks. This is something that I think can work well for a conference. In fact, we're adopting this system for a conference I'm co-organizing this summer. But I think for a workshop, you also want people to be able to be synchronously, and interact and ask questions So we decided on this compromise of having 2 workshop days. So one of them, the first one today, better aligned for the Western Hemisphere, and the second day tomorrow, better aligned for the Eastern Hemisphere. So hopefully this will allow at least, everybody to attend at least one day, while, of course, realizing that some talks, might not be accessible because of that. Now, in terms of affiliation, we have a very good mix of academia and industry. So we have roughly 60% people from academia and roughly 40% people from industry. And we also have a very good mix of career stages. I think that's also important. So for instance, looking at the academic researchers, we noticed that we have similar proportion of pre and post PhD researchers. So here is a word cloud of, using some of the terms that were inputted on the registration form in terms of participant interest. And I think, again, you can see this brings me back to the wide applicability of symbolic execution to many different problems. And I think this is reflected, in the interest that we see here. So of course, we see things like software and security, but we also see things like repair and the obfuscation and databases and education and robotics. And again, these are just a few examples. So our program consists of a keynote from Chao Wang from University of Southern California, which I'll introduce shortly, and 24 regular presentations on a variety of interesting topics, which are grouped into 7 sessions. So we're going to have the first 3 sessions today and the next 4 sessions tomorrow. So let me offer a big thank you to all of our contributors and of course all the participants, without whom this workshop, of course, would not have been possible. Now, a huge thanks also for Frank and Martin, the co-chairs of this workshop. So they put a huge amount of effort and time into organizing this workshop. So thank you, Martin and Frank. And also thank you, Timothy, Hassan, and Jamie for also helping with the various aspects of the organization. A big thank you also to our sponsors. So we have Bloomberg and Samsung as gold sponsors, and Google as silver sponsor. And also a special thank to Bloomberg for sponsoring the workshop for a second time. And also thanks to Imperial College London for facilitating this workshop. So thank you. Now, I also wanted to offer my thanks to the session chairs, Tomek, Alistair, Alex, Sebastian, Daniel, Julian, and Martin, because especially in a virtual setting, I think that's a tough job. So I appreciate helping us run the workshop smoothly. And finally, of course, I'm going to thank all the KLEE contributors. I'm going to start with Martin for commentating KLEE with me for the last many years now, and also to prior commentators Dan Liu, Andrea Matavelli, and Daniel Dunbar. And of course, Daniel, special thanks for starting the project back in 2007. And I'd also like to thank other major contributors. Particularly, I'm going to name Julian Buning, Frank Busse, Giri Slaby, Peter Collingburn, Timothy Kapus, Gleb Popov, and Kristina Palikareva. And extra thanks to Frank for maintaining the list of publications that I mentioned before, with papers and systems building up on KLEE, which now has reached over 220 items. And if you'd like to add your own work there, or any other work that we missed, please just get in touch with Frank, or even better, do a PR on the repository for the KLEE website. And of course, thank you to the entire awesome KLEE community. Right, so I'm going to end with some workshop logistics. So we're going to have the regular talks take approximately 12 minutes, followed by approximately 3 minutes of Q&A. So session chairs are going to ensure the talks don't overrun, but as speakers, please also make sure you keep on time. I think that's important, especially since some people may also want to join for a particular session, and of course we want to fit everything into a reasonable amount of time. We're going to have a mix of live and pre-recorded lectures, talks, depending on speaker preferences. And sessions are going to, so what we're going to try, sessions are going to end with the discussions with the speakers and the session chair. And here the audience is going to have the opportunity to ask additional questions about either about specific talks that we didn't have time to do during the Q&A associated with the talk, or about more generally about the session topic. Now, in terms of the recording policy, so we are recording the workshop. I'm sure you noticed this when we informed you about this. But as we discussed, we also mentioned during registration, I believe we don't plan to make the Q&A and discussion sessions available, and this is to encourage participation and a free exchange or an uninhibited exchange of ideas. But we would like to make individual talks available, later on with permission, with participant, with speaker permission via YouTube KLEE channel most likely. So if you are a speaker, please let us know if you're happy to make your talk available on a YouTube channel and link from the workshop website. But we are also going to email you about it after the workshop. Now, in terms of the actual logistics, please use the Q&A button, right? The Q&A feature of Zoom to ask questions. So not the chat. You can use the chat for other things, if you cannot hear us or cannot hear a speaker or anything else. But otherwise, please use the Q&A feature. And I think one nice advantage of the Q&A feature is that you can also, besides asking questions, you can also vote on interesting questions, and the session chairs are going to try to favor questions which prove to be popular with the audience. Now, after each session, just to say, all the unanswered questions are going to be dismissed so that we have like a clean slate at the beginning of each session to make it easier for our session chairs. But you'll have opportunity to ask more questions after the sessions, and I'll mention this shortly. Now, you can also raise your hand to ask questions with voice. The only thing to take into account is that with such a large audience size, it might make sense for session chairs to prioritize written questions, but really it's up to them how they plan to run the session. I'm happy to experiment, try various things. And yeah, as I mentioned, after sessions or even during sessions, we also have a Discord server set up where you can ask more questions about particular questions. So you have like one channel for each session, but you can also ask about, of course, you can chat about any other topics. Right, and two final requests. So one of them is that if you are working on a technique or an extension of KLEE, I would strongly encourage you to contribute it or parts of it that make sense to the KLEE mainline. I think that's not easy, I know, but I think it's a big achievement in itself, as the barrier for successful integration to the mainline is of course quite high. And more importantly, what you achieve by this is that your technique won't be forgotten and will be useful to others. And I think you also make it easier for new techniques to compare with your technique, enabling faster scientific progress. And my second request pertains to this workshop. Please ask lots of questions during the workshop. Don't be shy. And remember that, in fact, that's one of the main reasons for having the workshop in the first place. So I know that online discussions are indeed tougher, but let's try to make it as interactive as possible. All right. So with this, I'm just going to stop for a moment. I'm going to welcome you again, and I'm going to stop for a moment to see if there are any questions before starting the actual program. So I don't see Discord link in the registration mail. So yeah, there should have been in the same email that you received the Zoom link. There is later on a Discord invitation. So we're also happy to make it available. I think here on chat, so maybe Martin or Frank can put it here on the Zoom chat. Any other questions? Or yeah, any raised hands or okay. If not, let's let me close these windows and let's get started with the actual program. So I see Chao here promoted to panelist. Excellent. So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Chao Wang from University of Southern California. Chao is a leading member of the software engineering and formal methods community and has worked on numerous projects on improving the safety and reliability of and security of software systems. And several of his papers received best paper awards at top venues in this area. And he also made important contributions to symbolic execution, and I was very pleased to see that several of his projects were built up on top of KLEE. And today he's going to talk about one such project on adversarial symbolic execution for detecting timing side channel leaks. So I'm really looking forward to your talk, Chao, and the floor is yours.